Good evening. Welcome to the regular council meeting of the Township of Whitewater Region for Wednesday, April 6, 2022 at 4:47 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who take care of this land for thousands of years. Now stand for the prayer, please. Almighty God, we give thanks for the great blessings which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. Give us in our deliberations as Township councillors, strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen. So at this time, I would ask if there's any disclosure of interest for tonight. Seeing none, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 4, public meeting, Municipal Drainage Maintenance Inspection Report, and we turn it over to Steve, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce Lorne Franklin. He works for Robinson Consulting, and they did a maintenance review on all of our municipal drains for us. And Lorne also does supplemental drainage superintendent duties for us as well. So with that, I'll hand the presentation over to Lorne.
We can pull up the presentation. Well, thank you for inviting me and for putting me first on the agenda. I really appreciate that. This is our presentation for the inspections that we did on the municipal drains within the township. Robinson Consultants was appointed by the Township Whitewater region to provide drainage superintendent services in February of 2020 and has since provided these services on an ongoing basis. The duties of the drainage superintendent include periodic inspection of the drain and where necessary to report the findings to council, so that's what we're doing tonight. Upon being appointed, the following drains were found, documented, and surveyed. So that included the McLeod Municipal Drain, the Fifth Line Municipal Drain, Forester Falls, Haley Municipal Drain, Oates Municipal Drain, Queens Line Municipal Drain, and the Stanley Black Municipal Drain. There was some concern initially that some of these files might not be complete. However, we did do a search of the township records and we were able to find for each one of the documented municipal drains the engineer's report, bylaw, plans, profiles, and cross-sections. So from that perspective, the drainage reports are actually complete for those drains. We also did find mapping for the other municipal drains, but not necessarily files. Primarily, these are award drains. So award drains were constructed from the 1860s through to about the 1960s. They are protected under the Drainage Act. However, the municipality doesn't have any responsibility for maintaining them. They are maintained as per the award of the engineer, which would be written in the report of the time, although the township doesn't necessarily have to have the file, and it would say who's supposed to maintain the drain. Typically it was a farmer to maintain his own section of the drain, or the township to maintain their own section of the drain, or even for individuals to pay a portion of the maintenance cost when that came up. Or I've even seen one where it says that, you know, landowners have to show up on any particular Saturday when they're asked to with a shovel and help clean out the drain. So they're a little quirky in this day and age, but they do exist and they are protected. But luckily you don't have a lot of responsibility for them other than protecting them, knowing where they are. You should review them in terms of if there's developments in that area, if people are trying to use them, they need to know that they're protected and they're not it's not necessarily directly accepted that they could outlet to that drain as their legal outlet. We also found two more beyond that, which were the Graham Anderson Municipal Drain in Westmeath and the Pleasant Valley Municipal Drain in Westmeath. It's strange that they're both from Westmeath, so it's possible that maybe at the amalgamation of Westmeath, maybe you didn't get all the files, but that is a possibility. Those two are of some concern because you would have responsibility for them, but we don't know anything about them, whether to know exactly what's included in those reports. So yeah, as I said, I got a little ahead of myself. No documentation was found on the additional drains. documentation is not required for ore drains, and there are the two in Westmeath. After the survey was completed, reports were sent to the municipality, a separate one for the McLeod Municipal Drain because it's directly involved with a development that's going on in the village of Cobden. And then maintenance reports for the Fifth Line Forester Falls, Haley, Oates, Queens Line, and Stanley Black, and a report that combined the award drains and the other drains, and some recommendations on those. The following slides show the typical identified maintenance issues for the known drains. So for the McLeod, in conjunction with the August 2020 inspection, a visual review and topographic survey was completed for the drain. The inspection found the alignment and cross-section width of the overland swale are sufficient. However, the surveyed grades along this swale generally exceed the prescribed grades. It's anticipated that sedimentation has resulted from cultivation of the fields, so that's a normal thing. I don't believe it's been maintained recently, so that's probably something to give consideration to. Sinkholes, however, were found. This has both an overland swale and a tile system, and it's found that there were at least 2 locations where there were sinkholes where the tile drain system was failing, so that is definitely a problematic concern, especially with the idea that the new subdivision is then using this as their legal outlet. Typically, subdivisions, the consideration for subdivisions is to meet pre and post flows. However, that doesn't always give consideration to the idea that there are more flows, and that means the duration of flow is longer, and any flow that was causing problems, the duration of that would be longer as well. The inlet structure at the bottom end of the subdivision, which is station 0+624, was found to be in poor condition, and it's not suitable for use as an inlet for the drainage from the subdivision. There is a separate section 65 report that is being introduced for the subdivision to allow the subdivision of lands, and it does recommend that maintenance is done on this drain. If it's intended to use the drain and incorporate the Wren subdivision, at minimum, the full maintenance must be completed, then the section 65 finalized. The open drain swale must be maintained to the profile and cross-section prescribed by the 1982 report. And the full length of the tile system likely needs to be replaced due to known poor conditions, including the sinkholes. And the pipe material is HDPE and around 39 years old right now. And as well, from the early 80s, there were known problems with HDPE. They actually revised the formula for HDPE and improved upon it after that, because both pipes from before that era and after that era were much better, but there was a few years where HDPE pipes were not that great. The inlet structure should be replaced, and private farm crossings prescribed by the report should also be replaced in conjunction with any maintenance. So that's the McLeod drain just outside of the village of Cobden, and the Wren subdivision is placed at the top end, just towards the bottom of the page there. It's a snippet of the original McLeod drain just with our survey shots on it. You can see the dashed line is the swale system, and the more fuzzy line is the tile system that goes along with that. For the Haley drain, survey was completed in September 2020. Inspection found that half of the drain is tile drain identified as branches 2, 3, 3A, 3B, and 3C, and the other half of the drain is open ditch identified as branch 1. The 3 structures found along the drain all have no obvious defects, but are estimated at 37 years old, so could be coming closer to the end of their lifespan. 5 culverts were found along the drain and the open ditch, 3 of which had adequate conditions, and 2 were submerged due to the presence of a beaver dam, which was causing flooding. And one of our recommendations is to do the maintenance to remove that beaver dam and then finish the survey. The township, so the recommendations for the Haley drain are that the township update the existing schedules of assessment or appoint an engineer for the completion of a new Section 78 report if it's determined that the drain no longer provides adequate drainage and requires improvement. Remove the beaver dam. Proceed with a CCTV inspection to determine the current condition of the enclosed drain portion, and proceed with vegetation and bottom clean out of the open ditch portion of the drain, and to conduct another survey once the beaver dam is removed to determine any further deficiencies. So that's the Haley drain. The dashed portions are tile drain and the red line is open drain. And a picture of the typical vegetation conditions and a beaver dam there. So you can see this should look like a ditch and you can't really see one. So that's kind of the level that we're finding on most of the drains. For the Oats drain, inspection found that the entirety of the drain was open ditch, 9 culverts along the drain, all having adequate condition. Only 4 culverts were properly documented in the original engineer's report, so that means there's 5 extra ones. Those in some cases can be problematic because they need to be sized and it can't be determined whether they were properly sized or not. However, no other deficiencies were found on that drain. For the Oats drain, the recommendations are vegetation and bottom clean out for portions, full clean out, channel reconstruction for various sections, vegetation and bottom clean out, channel reconstruction again. So we switch back and forth between whether it's just vegetation removal and some clean out or some channel reconstruction due to failing banks. So there is quite a bit of channel reconstruction recommended on there. Map of the Oats drain. Queens Line, survey completed in September 2020. Inspection found that the entirety of the drain is tile drain. The problem with tile drain is that it's difficult to inspect. They don't have all the same manholes and everything that you would on a normal storm sewer system. However, on this one, we did find 3 sinkholes along the main drain and another potential sinkhole. And for this one, it's anticipated that the tile drain is nearing 47 years old, which is definitely nearing perhaps towards the end of its lifespan. Recommendations for the Queens Line: the township update the existing schedules of assessment or appoint an engineer if it's determined that the drain no longer provides adequate drainage and requires improvement, and primarily to proceed with a CCTV inspection to determine the extent of the damaged tile drain. Queens Line Municipal Drain, again, the dashed is tile. It's in proximity to the Oats drain, which we went over previously. That's what the Queens Line typically looks like. There is a swale over the tile system. The tile runs along both sides. The holes you can see at the bottom of the page are the sinkholes where the tile has failed. Fifth line, municipal drain, 2 sections. Line A, tile running through the agricultural field. Line B, half open ditch and half tile drain outletting into line A. Inspection found that line B uses overland flow to arrive at the same outlet. No deficiencies were found. Recommendations, it's the same recommendation really for all the drain, as they're all older files that eventually these reports are all going to need to be updated. For this one, because no deficiencies were found, we can wait to proceed with action regarding the tile system and inlet structures. Ultimately, we believe that the township should develop a tile drain maintenance and inspection program for the CCTV of municipal drains, focusing on the ones we've highlighted as priorities tonight, and then moving on to other ones. This one could be included in that. And proceed with vegetation and bottom cleanout of the open ditch portion of the drain. However, like I said, there's been no complaints on this one, so it could be marked as a lower priority drain. Fifth line drain. Forester Falls Municipal Drain. Survey inspection completed again in September of 2020. The entirety of the drain is tile drain with periodic catch basins along the main line and branches. 800 millimeter CSP manholes were found, all having no obvious defects. However, their age is estimated at 50 years. No other deficiencies found on the Foresters Falls one. Recommendations, again, lower priority, that ultimately sooner or later the report's going to need to be updated. We can wait to proceed with action regarding the tile system and inlet structures, and again, developing the CCTV inspection program to be implemented possibly over several years. Foresters Falls Drain, that's where it's located, just south of Howard Street in the Foresters Falls area. Stanley Black, surveyed in October of 2020. The entire thing is tile drain. 5 800 millimeter CSP manholes found along the drain. The drain paths all having no obvious defects, and their age assumed at 47 years. Wait to proceed with action regarding on the tile system as complaints are received or as identified by a CCTV program. That's the Stanley Black Municipal Drain. Now for the award drains and the other drains, as I mentioned, the township actually has no responsibility for the award drains. However, they do need to be aware of them and be aware that they are protected under the Act. We do recommend an additional search of the township records specific to the former township of Westmeath to see if there's files that are located somewhere else, or the township archives if that's available, to be completed for the 5 award drains and the 2 other drains. If documentation is found, there's actually less requirements for these, so that would be a good thing if we could find it. So there's an award drain for Bromley Line, an award drain for McLaughlin Road, an award drain for Valley View Road, award drains in Lot 9 and 10, Concession 7 of Westmeath, an award drain for Wright Road, the approximate location that we were able to determine for the Graham Anderson drain, and the Pleasant Valley Municipal Drain as an extension of what appears to be an existing award drain. That's the end of my official presentation. So yeah, what we're really recommending is that the township determine what level of service they'd like to proceed. Many townships are reactive in nature, only focusing on complaints. However, we believe that with the age of some of these drains and the known conditions that could come up, that it would be important to develop a maintenance protocol. And we're hoping to receive some direction through council and through staff in that regard, so we know how to proceed with the supplemental drainage services. Is there any questions?
Yeah, can you back up on your presentation to the picture of the drains in downtown Foresters Falls? Now, One of them drains is a county road drain, so I'm surprised that made the list. Because when you get to Beachburg has drains on the county road, but as far as we know, they're the county, so.
Yeah. Depends on how they were done. So if they were done under the Drainage Act, then they are, even though they may be within the county road right away, and the county would pay their fair share of the cost for the drains. If it's done under the Drainage Act, the township then has responsibility through their drainage superintendent to maintain that drain and identify the conditions to the county that might require maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, so a lot of them, you're asking for the Section 65, the reassessment of the benefits for the drains. And in particular, my concern is, and always has been, with regards to McLeod Municipal Drain, especially since the new development that has gone in there over the past years. I know when it was the village of Cobden, I used to work for the Township of Ross, so I looked after all these drains back then, and was in contact with Sid from way down in Toronto area. So these are all very familiar with me. But I know the village of Cobden never used to put it on the tax roll for the McLeod drain, and they used to just pay whatever Ross Township used to send. So I did send an email to our treasurer here at Whitewater to make sure that what we have now, at least the properties that were identified back then, and if they've been subdivided out, that all of those properties need to be identified as having future maintenance costs on the municipal drains. So other than I know Forster's Falls Municipal Drain hasn't had a whole lot of development, like houses develop in that area. There's been a couple probably since amalgamation, but I don't think so. And then a couple of the other ones, but I don't think there's like very many that need a full-on assessment. I mean, I would like to see that McLeod Municipal Drain, for assessment-wise, be prioritized first. Does that make sense in your?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is being.
Yeah.
With there's a Section 65 report for that's imminent that allows that construction to go ahead, but it does require that the maintenance be done.
Exactly. And that it be identified on all the tax rolls that future maintenance costs.
Yes. I believe in the past report, the urban properties within the village of Cobden are identified as a block, which is a little bit more work for the clerk of the township. Basically, they're given an assessment that goes to that whole block, and they're supposed to decide how the assessment is done by the MPAC value of the houses in there and split it up proportionally. Right. It can be I've seen other townships get away, even though it's kind of a gray area in the act with, saying everybody gets $50 or whatever. It's all an even cost and it goes out that way. If they're fairly comparable properties within the area, that's probably a fair thing to do. Right. And the reason why it probably wasn't assessed in the past is smaller costs. The municipality does have discretion if you've done only minimal maintenance, and let's say they're going to get a $2 assessment, and the stamp's going to cost $1 to send it out, then they don't bother.
Yeah,
so.
And I realize that, and certainly most of these municipal drains were maintained when it was Ross Township, and I know for the longest time staff were unable to find the files, so I'm really glad that you were able to find the files. And because it does have all the information that is required. I'm really glad that this has finally been brought forth, because as we all know now, the age of all these drains are coming to an end, and the maintenance is going to get higher as we go. We don't want to, as a municipality, have to pay for that maintenance outright. It has to be based on the assessment that was done for those municipal drain to get charged back to the properties that benefit. So I'm really glad that the file has been found, and the mapping and the assessments are there, and that the new, any new assessments that are completed in the future will be assessed properly. So thank you very much. It was a very, I know it wasn't a detailed report, but it was detailed enough for me. It was great. Thank you.
There are detailed reports for each of these drains that are available for your review. The presentation was more of a summary of those reports.
Which is perfect. No, I'm good. Like I said, I have the familiarity of the drains, so it's one advantage, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson.
Just because I don't know, can you put in layman terms the difference between a report 65 and 78? Section 65 and a 78, what's the difference?
A Section 65 report under the Drainage Act is one that allows one property to be modified within the drain. So if you have an original farm property that is then subdivided, you can modify that property to fit within the existing report so that it tells the drainage superintendent and staff how to deal with that property when it comes up, but it does not modify any condition on the drain. So the only condition of a Section 65 is that you can change your lot without affecting the drain, but you do have to prove that changing the lot isn't going to affect the drain either. So you have to prove that there's sufficient outlet. In the case of the McLeod drain, that's why we're suggesting that the repairs need to be done. But so that's a Section 65. A Section 78 is an appointment by council. It allows you to modify or improve the drain itself and also account for any severances or subdivisions or anything like that that has occurred over the years. But it's a new report and a new bylaw for the municipal drain, whereas Section 65 only modifies the existing bylaw.
And why would you recommend a 65 for the first one, McLeod, and not a 78, like you did for the others?
We reviewed the file for the municipal drain. With the subdivision, it's only one property being modified, which allows that. The subdivision itself is not on the municipal drain. They're only outletting to the municipal drain, so they're not having they have no direct requirement to modify the existing drain. We've reviewed the drain files, and we believe that with satisfactory maintenance of the drain, they could use that and it would provide a sufficient outlet. Those are the basic reasoning.
It's perfect.
Those are all that I can think of.
I'm putting it together. Mayor, if I can continue, that's all right. In terms of the assessment, so who pays for this? And again, my ignorance is coming forth. These municipal drains, not the award ones, but the municipal drains, is it the people who feed into that drain that are responsible for all the costs incurred to maintain it?
Yes, so there's two different ones. For a Section 65, so that's like the development of a property that's paid for entirely by the developer, but not the maintenance. So that's only the report to modify that, to modify their individual property. They pay for that cost, and they also pay what's called a buy-in amount. So if you're changing the land use and you're using the drain differently, it's the engineer's responsibility to determine what you would have paid if you were using that land originally when the construction was originally done, and transfer that to current day conditions and charge them that amount so that they're paying what they would have paid before. And that amount is then collected, and then it's used by the township at the time when they go to do maintenance. So if the cost is, $10,000 for the buy-in amount from the developer, that's collected, and then when you go to do maintenance, you use that $10,000 off the top of the maintenance before you assess it to all the other properties in the drain. The other properties for when you do any maintenance on a drain, the costs are collected and they are assessed to everybody who contributes water to that drain, either directly or indirectly within the drainage area. So if your property uses, let's say, a roadside ditch, and that roadside ditch ultimately gets to the municipal drain, then you're within the drainage area, you're contributing flow to that drain, and you pay a portion of the cost.
Excellent, okay. So if I can address the treasurer, do we track those? Like, is this like water and sewer where we track these funds that are pooled in, but people buying in, or severances or anything, or?
We will, and do what we need to do. But at this point in time, like, we haven't, I wouldn't say we're up to snuff on this presentation and where we need to be. But yeah, that would be, I'm assuming would be a requirement we would need to do and make sure that we do it correctly.
But it would be similar to water and sewer where we collect the funds, they can only be used for that purpose. Okay.
And if I can just add, if you don't mind, is that we haven't charged anybody back because we haven't done any maintenance. So the whole point of this is we're probably 20 years behind on some of this stuff. So it's getting the information on the tax roll. It's cleaning up the McLeod drain and the major development being added in. It's doing basic maintenance and CCTV work so we can maintain it. So it's just catching up. And we're building also the staff capacity. So Robinson is really helping us. But we're also, Kyle, Steve, and Lane are being trained on the drainage components as well. So it'll take a little bit of time to fix, but I think this gets us at least to understand what we have and the path forward.
Yeah, I think that, Rob, don't mind. And additionally, the assessment and what we've done here is, and maybe if Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong.
You should probably have a microphone.
That's not working.
Oh, do you have one?
Yeah, is that working or?
I don't know. I didn't see a microphone.
Okay.
Sorry, Lane.
Sorry. I'll switch it. That better? The work that's been done here is not can't be divided by like the work through the properties, and all this work is done by the drainage superintendent, which should be funded by the province, but what's not actually work that Lorne's done can't be assessed back to the property owners. Any future works can be.
Good. Lauren, I think, wanted to jump in there too.
Yes, that's true. The drainage superintendent services themselves cannot be assessed back to the individual properties. It's intended as a staff position. It can either be a municipal staff member or it can be an appointed firm, but they cannot be assessed back. However, you do get a 50% grant on drainage superintendent services from OMAFRA.
Awesome. So it's like overhead. Okay, track it. No, this is, I'd like to echo Councillor Jackson. I love this, and it's learning something new for me, so I'm very interested in it. I'm wondering, from a staff perspective, does the staff now flip this and make recommendations, or to create, like, for us to decide on anything, Rob, like we did with the reports that Ivan did on the building presentation?
And I asked the question, I believe the work on McLeod, the supplementary work on McLeod was already requested and is ongoing, and Lorne can speak to that. And I think it's understanding the scope of the maintenance work. So to Lauren's point about cleaning out a ditch might not require passing it out. We have the equipment. So there's some of the maintenance work here that could be added to the work plan. And I think from a finance perspective, we got a finance intern from Municipal Modernization Funding. Maybe that can help a little bit on cleaning that up. But there's a lot of work. So I don't know, Lane or Lorne, if you want to talk about kind of next steps on the McLeod drain. And then I think it would be for some of this stuff as part of the budget process on how this work is going to be done, and then what is charged back, what's not charged back. Obviously, we still require Robinson Consultants as we continue to sort this out. Mm-hmm. So that was budgeted. Their services are budgeted this year to assist us with some of that work.
So just to be clear on the question, the recommendations that are put forward, there's no motion for us to pass with these recommendations. So how does that come back to us?
So it'll come back in the staff report. This is really to highlight the good work that has been occurring over the last kind of year and a half, 2 years. And then staff will have to follow up with what needs to be actioned now. The sections, the McLeod piece will come back separately. And then the other stuff is kind of work plan, staff time, So I'd look for it in the 2023 budget process as well.
Good. I just have two more, Mayor, if I can.
Okay.
First one is just the involvement of the public and the people who own properties that are either directly or indirectly being serviced by these drains. I would encourage that we find some way to reach out to those people and let them know what we're finding. And because I didn't get any phone calls about this presentation, like no one out there may be tracking that we're doing this work now. So if there can just be a public engagement component of the next steps that occur. And the last one is very specific, and I'm going to flip, if I can flip to it's on the Fortress Falls one. So anybody who's been the council rep at the museum has had this one thrown at them. There is a drain in the back of that museum, a pipe that sticks out, and just water flows out. They believe it comes from the road. And the question is, it needs to be repaired or invested in or whatever. And it was unsure. In your study, did it become clear if that pipe that pokes out of the back of the museum lot, is that our responsibility or county's? If you don't know, that's okay. But no, it's in the ditch that goes out the back of the museum, right by the gazebo.
I don't recall that one being identified as a municipal drain, but if there's more information, would be happy to look at it and review for a further determination that would be covered under the current supplemental drainage superintendent services program. So
That would, I know Daryl, Council McLaughlin would be able to probably give you much more detail on it.
and
But if that could be looked at, just so that the museum, they've asked a number of times to both Daryl and I about it, it'd just be good to clear it up, identify who's responsible for it.
with regard to the public consultation question that you had, part of the requirements of the Drainage Act are at the prior to implementing any maintenance, that there is actually a public meeting that's held by the drainage superintendent and staff, and consultation is done with the members of the public that are contributing to that drain, and they get further input on any issues that they're aware of or any concerns that they have with regard to the maintenance. And at that time, some of the costs might be known, and it might be easier to let them know what their assessments are going to be and if they have any concerns about that sort of thing. So that is a component under the Drainage Act.
No, that's perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. The presentation was great. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
On the car line, I think is that the Stanley Black drainage? Yeah, okay. We put new, not manholes, but catch basins. And Keith Black owns the farm, and they were giving him trouble, and they'd been washed out. It was just maintenance. But he tells me by the railroad track, which comes along the old CAN line, there's catch basins over there. And I guess go underneath the track. Are we responsible for them as part of the drainage? He didn't say there was problems with it, but I just wondered about that, you know?
If they're on the municipal drain, sorry. If they're on the municipal drain, then you would be responsible for them. So
Okay.
there have to be a determination made if they're the municipal drain culverts or not. So
Yeah. Well, I guess that was the way they got underneath the
Yes.
track. And
underneath the tracks, through farm fields, anywhere where they're not, municipal drains aren't relegated to the
Okay.
road right-of-ways. They go through fields, they go under tracks. In that case, everybody along that drain is responsible for the maintenance of them. It's just
yeah, okay.
managed by the township.
I just didn't know if we were off the road. I thought maybe we weren't responsible. I guess I was wrong.
They go everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not just within the road right-of-ways.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I guess further to the CAO's comment with regards to if our staff did the maintenance, whether or not that can be billed back for maintenance costs. I think it's important that council, when they get the maintenance plan, that they understand what can be billed back and what can't be, because if our staff are dealing with a municipal drain that is to be the benefit of certain people and certain property owners, then is it wise to have our staff do it? Even though it may be cost effective, but it's not cost effective if we're taking them away from other duties that they should be doing. So if it's not covered, then we should be contracting that job out. If it is covered, then it's simply tracked, and the hours that are worked and an associated cost per the equipment would have to be agreed upon and charged back. But with any maintenance plan that comes forward, I think council needs to be aware of what can be charged back and what can't be charged back, so that they can make a clear understanding and a proper decision as to where the township residents, ratepayers, funds are going to. I wouldn't want to see somebody that doesn't benefit from a drain pay for a drain, because they're not benefiting from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lane, you have your hand up, but I think Councillor Olmsted had his hand up first. Go ahead, Lane.
One of the next steps also would be provide the mapping, that all assessment onto to the county GIS and also in our internal GIS, so any future development planning matters. So if it was severance, for example, that would be on one of the severance applications, so to be more public and more upfront. So it's one of the next steps also with this.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, back to McLeod for a second. I bought a house on Wren Drive in '93, and to my knowledge, there's been no work done, no maintenance done on McLeod Drain since. In fact, I know there hasn't been. That's not my question. My question is, there's a lot of development at the start of that drain and a lot of future proposed development. In your estimation, is that drain built to withstand future development? So the second part of that is I know there's a storm pond as part of the development in Wren subdivision. Actually, and it looks like it's right at at the start of the yellow line at the McLeod drain. So I'm just wondering if you knew that or what your thoughts are on that.
The review that we've already completed under the Section 65 indicated that if maintained, the drain would provide sufficient capacity for the proposed development at this time and existing developments that aren't there now. It would not have included any review for future development, and I would say it's probably, without seeing what potential future development is there, that it's probably near its capacity and could not handle any more, in which case it would need to be, rather than, if they're off the drain and you couldn't do a Section 65 at that point, it would have to be a new report and a new improvement to the drain that would allow capacity for the future development if and when it gets to that point.
I would suggest then you change your Section 65 to a 78, because I think by the end of this year, there's going to be 25 to 30 homes up there with another like 45 planned. Is that right?
I think the consultant looked at this plan of subdivision as a whole, so not the phasing, but the subdivision.
Oh, okay.
So which was identified as a block on the plan. So that's why. What I think Lorne is saying is if there'd be development on other adjacent lands,
Right.
they could not. That would be a full 78. But the block. So although we're seeing the homes now, the review was based on the plan of subdivision as a whole, which was engineering part of a plan of subdivision and a subdivision agreement.
So it's the Wren subdivision as a whole, not. Okay, I understand that.
That's correct. Sorry if there's any misunderstanding.
Yeah, sorry, I
Yes, the
thought
Wren
you were just
subdivision as a whole, if there
Yeah.
were new subdivisions beyond the Wren subdivision, then it's probably past its capacity.
Right,
And
okay.
could not accommodate those without a new report.
Okay, understood.
And that should be triggered as a condition of development for future developments,
Right.
knowing that it is a municipal drain and it's at capacity.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Nicholson.
Curiosity got the cat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, what about the storm drains that exist in the settlement areas? Are they handled in a different way? I'm thinking Westmeath and Beachburg. They're not under your purview. They're under just our department, or how does that work?
Speak to that, yeah, so, with drains that are, with tonight, with municipal drains, they're a designated area, to provide drainage, for property that are not access to near water course. And during the course we took 2 weeks ago, the workshop I guess was, any property that's near a water course has the right to drain water in that. Anyone that's next to not frontage a water course does not have the right to provide water in there. And that's why the Drainage Act provides municipal drains to allow that. Through urban areas, because the Drainage Act is one of the oldest acts, correct me if I'm wrong, Lorne, in Canada. It's a very, very old act, and since then there's been a lot of with urbanized and pipe drainage, and then that belongs to the municipality, township or town or city. That's their infrastructure. And it's their asset, not the in the difference to a municipal drain, where it's divided by the cost by the benefit lands.
If I can just add, so basically the asset management plan would speak to that, just like roadside ditches. So it's, to Lane's point, it's an asset. Interestingly, Westmeath and Beachburg, where some of these catch basins are, they're on county, some of them are on county roads, so it'd be county's infrastructure. And in Westmeath, to Lane's point about draining into a water course, they're draining to that creek that sediments into the boat launch, and we're looking at that creek. So it gets complicated from there, but the good part is this has been on our radar for a while. It was a strategic priority. This is really great work, and I think at least we know now what we need to do to move forward. And I think staff, between Steve and Lane, with some assist from Kyle, have it well in hand. And I know Janet Collins and I called Lorne. You'll remember we single sourced this because we knew we were in a bit of trouble and needed some expert advice. So that firm has done some great work, and this started when Janet was here. So it's been in the works.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I just want to say the importance of drainage to farmers. Probably 60% of production has gone up because you've drained your farm. And that's why it's been around so long, and that's why it's so important to our economy in the province and the country. That's it.
Agreed. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you very much, Lauren. Appreciate your time and a very good presentation. Certainly opened our eyes on a lot of things and sparked a lot of questions. So staff will have a lot of work to do. So thank you very much. Now we move on to 4.2, Township Landfill Overview. And this goes to Steve, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last meeting, we had some interest in some capacity questions and whatnot about the landfill. So I'll start by thanking Lane for putting this together. I haven't done a PowerPoint in over 20 years. I just added some data, that's all. So, Township landfills. Here's a little table of contents. With the Ross landfill history, we'll look at the timeline, the expansion feasibility study, 2022 site improvements, scales, fees and charges, fee comparisons, and tipping fee review. So we have 3 waste sites. 2 of them are closed. I had the pleasure of closing both of them a long time ago, and we have 1 operational. Well, we'll get right into them. Cobden, when I started here, was basically at capacity, with no ownership of property around the waste disposal area. It was deemed inappropriate to keep it open. So it was closed in 2002. Wow. No, that's not right, actually. I started, 2004. 2004 we closed it. Sorry about that. So yeah, it's permanently closed as far as the ministry is concerned and as far as we're concerned. And I'm not sure about the history of it. There's probably people in the room that could tell me when it was operational, and I don't even know when it began. But it's a small little site, and it's actually adjacent to Logo's land property. And we do now own a contaminant attenuation zone on Logo's land property, which means we've purchased the groundwater rights, so they can't drill a well in that particular area because the flow is going towards Logo's land. The Westmeath landfill is where I started. We closed that in the spring of 2006. It is full to capacity. There's no question. And we do own attenuation, contaminant attenuation zone land around the Westmeath site. It is in very close proximity to the river. So we monitor surface water on a regular basis, and that'll be continual till the ministry tells us that we no longer have to do that. But dilution is the solution, so these old sites, they're like tea bags. They're strong at first, but they lose the leachate parameters, they lose strength over time. So that one closed in 2006, and we immediately, now part of the idea following amalgamation, as I understand, was to close the Ross site, because it was open at the time, and after amalgamation, focus all the waste in the township to the Westmeath site, to fill it to capacity, because it was known that it was getting close. And then when that was full, then we'd go back to Ross, and it would become the centralized facility for the township. So the Ross site, we reopened it in April 2006. It began with a trench infill area. We excavated a trench about 15 feet deep, 250 feet long, or wide, and about 750 feet long. And a lot of those sands and clays that came out of there actually went to the Cobden landfill to cap it. So it was a good use for that material. So we had the trench. That's phase 1, and we filled that in essentially 6 years. So in 2012 is when we really started looking at getting approval to move into phase 2. And at the last meeting, Councillor Jackson had questions about, was there a time when our capacity bumped up tremendously? And I apologize for not thinking about this, but that is exactly when that occurred. When we got approval to go into phase 2, we then had approval to essentially build a waste mound. So we went from 40 to 50,000 cubic meter trench to a couple of 100,000 cubic meters in landfill. So, yeah, you have a good memory. Yeah. The theoretical capacity when we moved into Ross, into the trench, was the way the ministry looked at it back then and now today. They look at theoretical capacity of a site based on the area. That's it. But they also assumed at the time going down under that whole area, going down 25 feet. So if you do the math, that's how we ended up with that theoretical capacity of 434,000 cubic meters, give or take. So when we got approval to go into phase 2, to get approval, we now have to take into consideration a buffer zone, a 30-meter buffer around the garbage, between the garbage and aligning properties, adjacent properties. So that really shrinks your capacity right off the bat. So JP2G on our behalf came up with a development and operation plan. It was approved, and it came up with a waste mound of 375,000 cubic meters. So that's the number we're operating under. Oh, we did purchase property. We bought some CA contaminant attenuation zone properties. So to the northwest, we bought 33 acres in 2006. And in 2009, we bought 49 acres to the northeast, all the way down to Blind Line. So you can see in this picture, you can see our original stage 1 trench. And that was, like I said, we filled that in 6 years. Yeah, so the site, we know the site was taking garbage in. It probably started as a sand pit and or sand and gravel pit, and it's been taking garbage since the 70s, probably even earlier. So here we can look at cubic meters, and that's what we're assessing everything on. So 1970 to 2000, there's a historical, and I can pretty much guarantee that those are very much assumed numbers. So, and then from 2000 to 2002, we put in 10,000, just over 10,000 cubic meters. 2002 to 2005, the site was closed, and this is when Westmeath was the primary waste disposal facility to fill it to capacity and then move back. So from 2006 to 2013 or 2012, that's when we filled the trench. So 2012, 2013, we got our approval. I think we finally got the piece of paper in 2014, but then we started looking at what was already in place and that 375 cubic meter approved waste mound. So now we start counting down, and you can see where we are and some estimated remaining years. And 2021, it was assumed there's 21 years of capacity left based on the approved waste mound. And remember, or take into consideration, this is all based on a topographic survey conducted once a year. Highly accurate, I would say no, but it tells us what we need to know. So we operate under ECA A413209. It's environmental compliance approval set by the ministry. We do have an opportunity to look at potential capacity. It's going to have to go, if we could expand the site, because you can do it without a full environmental assessment. But in our particular case, it would have to move into our CAZ, I would suggest, to the northeast. And in hindsight, We could have purchased more property in 2006 to the north. We did not. So if we did expand the site, got approval to do so, it would move into the northeast, into our CAZ, probably. I really don't know where else it could go. And based on the direction of the groundwater flow, I would say that there may be future land acquisition if doable. Because in the CAZ we have right now to the northwest along the perimeter of that property, we are seeing evidence of leachate. So to get future capacity, it's going to be based solely, in my opinion, on groundwater monitoring and the results over the program and continuing into the future. So we may want to, in good faith, drill a couple more wells in our CAZ over the next year or two. So 2022 site improvements. Well, first of all, we now have operational scales. We're looking at below, or to the east, below where the scales are, a little container area. This would be really beneficial to keep the public contractors off the tipping face, which is a dangerous spot with the heavy equipment in operation. And then you still have to get big trucks in there, but you're not so focused on really high-grade roads, which is expensive to build and maintain. So again, it's just a little drop-off area, roll-off containers. It's an elevated platform where you just sort your material into the specific containers. We'll still have stockpiles for brush and tires and lumber. So we're still doing the same thing. We're just keeping people off the tipping face where the equipment's in operation. So we did budget some money for 2022 to get underway with that. Here's our scales. They're Rice Lake, 60 feet long, 11 feet wide. Our tipping fee is based on, well, we'll get to that in a bit, but it's based on $95 a metric ton, which is pretty average for around here. They were installed in late December, and we were operational January 4th. And the software is actually quite user-friendly. I'm even learning, which is amazing. I amaze myself, actually, that I can do. So yeah, there's our scoreboards. It shows you green light, red light, and what you weigh coming in, what you weigh going out. Little shot of our software. And there is still work to be done on the approaches. We just kind of ran out of good weather. So here's a look at our fees and charges. $95 a metric ton, $20 minimum. So it basically to go across, unless you've got a bag of garbage, which we still charge $5, to go across the scales with garbage, it is a minimum fee of $20. By the way, if there's any questions, interrupt me, please. And you can see.
I just want to know how high can you go on that? How high can you go up?
From ground level, we're looking at about 8 meters. 25
So
feet.
32 feet.
No, 25 feet.
Okay.
About 25 feet high.
But that's the whole area, though. That would
Yeah.
be quite a hill then, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You can see some of there's quite a few items that we don't charge for, obviously. A couple of those things were under provincial programs, like electronics. Here's a fee comparison. So we are very, very similar. You'll see Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center, if you're a non-partner, you'll pay substantially more. And here's a little analysis of where we are based on the first 3 months of the last 5 years. So as of March 23rd, not the 31st, we came up with, we are generated just over $17,000 in revenue. The year before that was $40,000. The year before that, $18,000. And 2018 and 19 were pretty heavy too. That's the end. Can I answer questions?
Councillor McLaughlin, please.
I guess one of my questions on your fees, and I brought this up before, is we used to be able to bring the ashes to the landfill, which was, in my mind, is a great way to dispose of your furnace ashes.
Yep.
I understand that it went further than furnace ashes, or
Yeah, it did.
and that's why the fees. My problem with it is that it was a nice and easy way and well done to dump your hot ashes. I worry now, because we're charging fee for them, that there's going to be fire, because people are not going to pay to dispose of their ashes. And
Yeah.
that's where I come, that's my reasoning, and I think I don't see the little bit of revenue that would come in, that if there was a fire, it would all be used up immensely.
So, Councillor McLaughlin, I'll tell you exactly why I started charging for ashes. Because it was before we had scales, it was very difficult to measure. How do you measure based on so much per cubic meter, a couple of pails of ashes, or a mound of ashes in some cases in the back of a truck? Now that we have scales, it's very simple to weigh it. And that's why I started. But I'm open to any direction council wants to give in terms of charging for ashes. Absolutely. That's basically the bottom line. I mean, it takes up landfill space. I can weigh it now, so I charge for it.
Councillor Mackay.
I just want to say that I went to take a load of stuff, and the scales are very accurate, because Bill said, "Do you know what you weigh?" And I said 165, and we dumped and came back, and it was right on. It was like maybe within a pound. It's pretty amazing. Like, that's a lot of big equipment. And so I thought that was pretty good. And I haven't had any phone calls since you put the scales on. I got lots of phone calls before you put the scales in, because people would have smaller trailers and bigger trailers. I don't know if you got any complaints, but since that's gone in, I haven't got any complaints. So.
Yeah, we get all kinds of different vehicles there. Actually, I'll take this opportunity. Hopefully people are watching. Farmers in particular, don't come to the site with your manure spreaders anymore, because they won't fit on the scales. We've had a couple of very, very close ones that, and according to Bill, was a very small manure spreader. So we get people that fill their manure spreader full of garbage. So there's only it's only 11 feet wide. Yeah, no, actually, I have had people leave because they didn't want to pay for their ashes. But other than that, there's been very little complaints.
That's good.
If I can just add, maybe the tipping fee revenue is lower because people that can use curbside pickup, or you can put 2 bags of garbage for free at your laneway, maybe people are using that service that is paid for through a charge. People are being charged, and limited recycling. So coming to the landfill for their recycling when we accept recycling at the curb. So I think we've done some good work at the landfill, and kudos to Elaine and Steve for their work, and Bill and Courtney. But also I think hopefully we're getting some good pickup. I know my neighbors driving to work, there's people putting garbage bags and recycling out that didn't before we changed the fees. So yes, there's a reduction in tipping fee revenue, but it could be also that there's some people using curbside pickup that would go to the landfill on Wednesdays and Saturdays when they could drop it off at the end of their curb. So we'd provide those two important services.
Okay, before we move on, is there a notice of motion for ash fees coming later?
No, so the councillor could do that under notices of motion. I should just say if we're changing fees, we have to do a public meeting. But I didn't hear a mover to change the bylaw. Like it's not in the list of no charge items, so it's charged like everything else.
And to change it now would require a public meeting.
We'd have to give notice, and we're changing our fees, and we'd have to go through that process. Or you wait and we change it for the 2023, but that would require a motion to bring that back and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I too have heard very little complaints since the scales have been in. Where I'd hear maybe 5 a day before, I've probably heard 2 since, and they're from contractors that were complaining a bit about renovations and bringing shingles or something like that in that weighs heavy. And my advice to them was upcharge, charge your customer. And I think the CEO is correct that maybe the high fees over the last year and a bit, whatever it was, I think it made a lot of people kind of relook at their operation, especially commercial. It made us relook at what was going in. So we've actually really curbed our landfill use. The question I have is our garbage pickup. I can't remember who the contractor is now. Miller. So they're using our site, and are they subject to the same charges?
No, they're bringing in our curbside material, so we don't,
Right.
we weigh them.
Okay.
Because we like to know the tonnage.
Right, but there's no charge fee?
No.
Okay, yep. And that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure whether, since we put the scales in, whether any of that has changed whatsoever, so. Okay.
We are asking people to sort their loads better, because in our user fees, we have the ability, under our user fee schedule, we have the ability to charge double if they don't sort. And really, for the most part, our main focus is lumber, because we grind it, and metal. Those are the 2 main items we don't want to see dumped at the tipping face, obviously. So we are starting to use that. We've used it a couple of times. And so go ahead.
Yep, in my opinion, the scales is going to be a fantastic mechanism now to measure what's heading to our landfill annually. Yeah. Where before, you're taking an aerial shot and getting the tape measure out and trying to figure it out. Yeah. But I think we've got a real good, I think it was a great investment on long term. Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Ladies first. Re-rigger.
Just a comment. I do just want to kind of give a hats off to Millers. I have to tell you that they are very professional. Mm-hmm. One day I witnessed one of the guys stopping to pick up some extra garbage that had blown off. So I just have to put a hats off out there to them and commend them for the work that they do. And they're not always pleasant conditions that they're working in, cold, rain, whatever. And I do just have to say that they're very professional and very, very, very good to work with.
I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks for this report, Steve and Lane. Team effort. Question I just had, 2 of them. The first one is just about, are we aware of any other informal sites? Like, was Westmeath the only one that was previously used in the former township of Westmeath?
I am aware of one out in La Paz area, an old historic site. There's probably several more. But I'm not familiar with them, nor do I know where they may be, but
They're not on municipal-owned property?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Good. The second question is just with the tipping fee revenue. I noticed that, you know, aside from 2020, which I don't understand that blip, we're about half the revenue. Now, I can assume that a portion of that can be attributed to curbside, you know, more effective and efficient curbside. What does your gut say for what might make up that difference this year?
My gut tells me that the way we did it per vehicle type charge per vehicle type in 2021, we were at the high end of your typical tipping fee for this area.
So the volume of traffic might not have changed, just the way we were charging.
Actually, it was a very slow winter this winter. So I would say, and maybe
Proportionally.
Rob's onto something, maybe there is less people coming because it was a very slow winter at the site. I mean, it's always slower, but it was a very slow winter. Maybe more people are using curbside.
Perfect. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Reverg,
I'm just wondering, when you're talking about the tipping fees, I wonder if you're going back to 2020 when it was 186,000. I mean, it was during COVID where nobody was really going anywhere, doing anything. So you can see where that decline was, and where it picked up in 2021 is where people started to open up and started to clean up. And I think that's where your differences came. That would be my assumption anyway.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
And they wanted
Just
to
a
get things
thought.
cleaned up before, because some of them were concerned that it was going to cost too much with the scales. Some of the people were maybe cleaning up and getting rid of stuff before
It
the
happened.
scales.
Yeah, for sure.
Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, and I think in 2020 as well, is that people were at home, had more time to get their garbage ready to put it out at the curbside. Because, I mean, if you actually looked at maybe, and I didn't look at the volume, but I know in other municipalities, the amount of waste that went to the waste site was increased because people were at home instead of decreased, because they weren't going to work all day. They were at home producing garbage at home instead of at work. So it's interesting. I was interested to know that it actually went down, and I think as well that the actual tonnage went down as well. Yeah, in 2020, well, it was about the same, but in 2021 it went up drastically. So who knows why people do the things they do.
Okay, thank
And
you.
a good social morning, don't
2 mornings a week.
they?
You went two mornings a week, not just Saturday. Okay, anyone else? Seeing none? Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Lane. Appreciate your hard work. And then I'm looking around, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay, 5-minute break? Okay. Thank you, and we're back. And we'll go to item 5 now, announcements. Reeve Regier.
I think housing affects all of us at one point in time. So if you can just take 5 minutes and check that out and do that survey would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Mackay.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Jackson.
At this time, unless somebody else is going to announce about the Cobden Agriculture event for Easter and the trivia night and
I think you
or the
go ahead.
Cobden Recreation Association, sorry, not the agriculture. But there's events next Saturday for the Cobden Recreation Association.
Because it's trivia.
It's trivia,
Saturday night.
and during the day you can get your picture taken with the Easter Bunny, all kinds of good stuff. Saw it on Facebook. It's where I get all my news.
Children in the daytime and the adults at night.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I'll just bring up the Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living. Our organization is hosting a number of activities in April. You'll see similar activities in May and June, but this week we've had a musician play on April 5th, Tuesday at the 5th here in Cobden. Today in Westmeath there was a wills and power of attorneys presentation at the hall with some coffee and snacks. Next week we'll see in Beachburg on Monday there'll be another repeat of the wills and power of attorneys, and that's just at the Whitewater Seniors in the Old Scotia Bank from 1 till 2:30. And on Tuesday we're back here in Cobden, Tuesday, April 19th, after Easter, for a magician from 1 to 2:30. I'll forward this out to each of the councillors, the Reeve and the Mayor, just so you have it handy. It is posted already on the Township website, Facebook page, Whitewater News, you name it, it's out there. But just so you're aware, if you get some questions about it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I have nothing to report at this time. So now we'll move on to reports. 6.1, Integrity Commissioner Report. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Integrity Commissioner's 2021 Annual Update. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson, thank you. And this goes to Rob, please. Carmen. Okay.
Councillor Mackay and Councillor, sorry, who seconded it? Oh, sorry, thank you.
Jackson.
Thank you. Okay, as you know, Tony Fleming of Cunningham Swan is our Integrity Commissioner, and they are required to provide us an annual report on the latest information on any integrity matters. For 2021, there have been no complaints or requests for advice, so pretty simple and easy.
That's the report, and we're good to go then. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Move on to 6.2, Pembroke Area Airport Commission 2022 Budget. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the 2022 Pembroke Area Airport Requisition. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Regier and Councillor Jackson. And this goes to Sean?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We get this every year from the airport. They send out their annual budget for council's approval. This year for their municipal, we'll call it levy for lack of a better term, what they want to collect from the municipalities, our portion's $15,228. In 2022, we budgeted a total for the airport of $100,000, and that's inclusive of this municipal levy portion. The project runway, our last contribution, our fifth of 5-year contribution to their project runway, and for their fuel tank replacement. So we have received kind of a schedule of payments for their fuel tank replacement, and I think with our payments with this levy and with the contribution to Project Runway, we're just above budget by about $3,000 or $4,000. So I think it's good news. And then obviously for this budget, if you have any questions for the line items, I can definitely try to answer them or take them back to the airport for further clarification. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And with that, I'll pass it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 6.3, McGregor Encroachment Agreement. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into an encroachment agreement to allow for a sign and display located within the Dombrowski Road allowance. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Mackay. Thank you. This goes to Lane, please.
Yeah, thank you. Steve McGregor is requesting to put a sign in a display on the township right away. If you can scroll down to the map, and it's located in front of his property, located at 189 Dombrowski Road. It is located quite far off the road, as presented in the report. In talking to them, we as staff provided, were recommending a fee of $700 per year. That was based on the signage that we have for the two signs on the highway. In talking to them, to Steve McGregor, he provided a one-time fee of $200. In talking with the CAO, that we feel that maybe that a $500 one-time fee for the term would be more adequate. That's not on the highway. It's not. It's on a back road. The fee would be adequate. And it's shown on the plan on the screen that it's a smaller area that wouldn't be in front of the next house. They'd be more prevented in front of his property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.4, Town of Renfrew's Household Hazardous Waste Depot. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region 1 endorse joining the Town of Renfrew's Household Hazardous Waste Depot to provide Whitewater residents with a seasonal household hazardous waste disposal option. And 2, direct staff to send the letter to Honourable John Yakubuski, MPP, for the riding of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke to support the Township in joining the Town of Renfrew's Household Hazardous Waste prior to an official approval from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks of the town's ECA amendment. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. And this goes to Blaine? Steve. Okay, goes to Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have an opportunity here to increase service level. Funny enough, kind of gone full circle, because following amalgamation, we were part of the Renfrew's Hazardous Waste Program and the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center as well. And looking into them, I found that they were not heavily used at all. So we started having our own events twice a year. Those events are getting busier and busier, and we're filling tractor trailers now with chemicals. This is a seasonal opportunity spread out for the spring, summer, and fall, which will increase service to the people of Whitewater region. Unfortunately, to allow us to become part of the program, they have to amend their ECA for their waste site. So this is kind of a look for support from our local MPP's office, and hopefully we won't have to go down that route, because it can be quite tedious and lengthy. Any questions? Oh, and we are having a spring hazardous waste event. It's for May 7th.
May 7th. Okay, so we don't know what time or what time frame this would be to actually join Renfrew. Would it be this year or next year? Do we know?
Lane, do you have an idea on that?
It's all based on their ECA.
Right.
At the point, they brought it to their committee and they're welcoming that we did. We started last fall, as Steve mentioned, with a leg to be part of the program. And it seems like the Renfrew that they're wanting us to join. And they're hoping to also bring a letter to the local MVP also to push ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I guess one question, and then I can raise my concern, is that the ratepayers would have to attend the Renfrew, Town of Renfrew
Correct.
landfill site?
Correct.
So I have a concern with that, because I don't think that we're going to get a number of ratepayers attending there. I think the reason why we get people attending at Whitewater for the mobile is that it's in our township. So while it may be cost savings, it certainly doesn't service our township well, in my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin?
Just correct me, Steve, but I think at one point, did we not try this before? Years and years ago?
When I first started, Councillor McLaughlin, the township was utilizing both the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Centre and the Town of Renfrew's hazardous waste programs. After investigating it, they were not heavily used. So we canceled that and we started having our own events twice a year.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I'm coming from. And now it's became, because if it wasn't being used, it was going somewhere. And now we're getting an awful turnout, or a good turnout.
Yes, we are.
And we're disposing this stuff properly.
Yep.
And I'm much like Councillor Jackson. I realize maybe it's cost effective, but I think and as Councillor Jackson says, it's being disposed of the proper way, and I don't think dollars can be put into that. So I'm really reluctant in going this way because we've had such a great turnout, and I know it may be more work, it may be more expensive, but it's disposing of the stuff the way it should be disposed of. Yeah. So I'm with Councillor Jackson on this one.
Well said. I just look at this as an opportunity to give our ratepayers an opportunity to get rid of these materials for several months of the year instead of twice a year. That's all.
Thank you. Rob?
I was just going to add that, so we're looking at potential, our costs are $30,000 to $40,000, which would be for two days for 6 hours, so 12 hours, versus 4 days a week for a number of months. And I would just point out, I live in Westmeath and I go to Pembroke for my groceries, and I know, speaking to people in Beachburg, Halfgo and Cobden, they go and get their groceries in Renfrew. So I understand it's outside the municipality, but I would say that for many services, our residents would go outside, and it could result in so it's a substantial service increase. Yes, they have to drive an extra distance, but they could do so at any time over a number of months, 4 days a week, versus 2 periods at 40,000. So there's like substantive cost savings, increase in service. Yes, a slightly different, but let's be honest, many of our residents have to access services in Renfrew and Pembroke that aren't available in our township. Grocery store is just one of them. So I appreciate the concerns in terms of going outside, but when staff looked at this as part of the LEG initiative in terms of savings, this is one where the cost savings are significant, but also the level of service is higher. And it would be true if we were sending people where they don't normally go. So as a resident of Westmeath, I don't typically go to Renfrew, but I know that there are a lot of residents of Cobden and the Beachburg area and Ross for sure that do go to Renfrew for groceries on a regular basis, as an example. But it's really as council's discretion on whether you want to pursue this, and the sooner we let Renfrew know, the better. But in the meantime, we have organized, we will not decrease the level of service. So Steve's organized the May one. Should you want us to pursue this and the ECA process is lengthy, we would hold the fall one as we would normally do. We wouldn't decrease the service without coming back to council. But this is an increase in service at a lower cost.
Okay, thank you. Lane?
Yeah, thank you, and that was well said, Rob. And I just wanted to add, also, even in ours, and Steve can add to this, we've seen a major increase over years, and same was also in Renfrew, that they've seen increase every year. They've seen an increase of products because people are more conscientious and bring material. And that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, but because our numbers have increased, we have no way of knowing if they're actually all from our township or not, because I don't remember showing a card. Did we show cards the last time?
We did last
We did.
year, yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I know I was there, but I can't remember. Councillor Nicholson, please.
Yeah, this is a touchy subject, and I think it's a great initiative. I think it's a great way for us to save money. The competing thought in my head is the environment's an important issue, and I just want to make sure that we don't create an environment or create a situation where people might take the shortcut and may not dispose of things properly. That being said, I was on a farm. I would frequently miss a year at a time because it's one weekend, and I would have half a barn full of everything, used oil, you name it, and then I'd show up with a half ton, and Steve and his guys would frown at me. So I see the service level with Renfrew as a very positive benefit. In that situation, if you're moving or you got to clear some stuff out, why not just drive to Renfrew? And you can make from where I live, 45-minute drive. I'm just loath to turn off that extra level of support at this point in time. What I'd like to see maybe is if we could slowly transfer. We do one event, or we plan one event next year. If we see the demand decreasing, then maybe the next year we don't do an event. But I would hate to see that waste going where it shouldn't. So anyway, that would be my input. Yes, I would proceed with this, but maybe the transition would be phased over a number of years. Thank you.
We do have 2 events scheduled for this year. They're both scheduled, spring and fall.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I like the initiative from a business perspective. So our parent company encourages retailers to take on, for instance, paint. Any paint retailers, they want you to take back any unopened cans or unused paint or whatever. So we don't advertise that we do it because you can imagine. Yeah, no, we don't do it. And I too have showed up at the waste site, or sorry, the hazardous waste day, with a skid full of other people's paint and been frowned at a lot, and me trying to explain that it's not actually my paint. So, and the reason they're encouraging that to retailers is because my company is typically in rural Canada, and the opportunities for hazardous waste are few and far between. Every municipality usually has a day or two here and there, similar to what we do. So I would like to be able to tell customers that, hey, you could just drive up the road, and we don't really want your stuff at my place of business. So I agree. I think I'd like to try it, whether it works great or not. I think it'll take time for people to catch on, but I think it's a worthwhile initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay and then Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, Steve, why is it that when I go, I've taken oil cans and put them in my garbage, they reject them, or in my recycling?
It's because of the residue of the oil inside the container.
The can is made of oil, you know that, eh? The plastic
Yeah,
container.
I know. It's petroleum, I know. It's the residue.
Okay, all right. It's disappointing, I'll tell you right now.
Is there a time period that we're locking ourselves into an agreement with the town of Renfrew?
No, not at this time.
I just add that once it get ECA approval, we'd have to come back with some form of agreement. I would think the town of Renfrew would want confirmation of that. So right now, they said yes, they would allow us to be a partner and would go through the ECA process, but we would need to finalize that and that come back. But we don't want to pursue that if council doesn't kind of want to go down that route. If you want to continue with the current model, then we should tell Renfrew that. But I would say once they can receive our material, that we would formalize that in some form of agreement, which would speak to terms.
Right. And I guess the other question is if we do go to the town of Renfrew, are they going to be tracking the number of vehicles or the amount of household hazardous waste coming from the Township of Whitewater region?
I would assume so.
Because that would be the only way we would be able to tell if it's beneficial to our ratepayers. I get that it's beneficial cost-wise and level of service-wise, so we say, but usage is a different story, right? So I don't know. I don't know what to think. I mean, I get it, and I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's I just don't know how well it's going to be received, because that's why we went away from it, because it wasn't being utilized before. Yeah. And now we're going back. And I have no problem with going back, but is it the right choice? I'd like to know over time, and I guess depending on the number of years that they're going to be asking for an agreement, to see if it's worthwhile. Because, the savings or the cost, that if we're not getting any uptake in it, then it's a waste of money. It's not a savings of money, it's a waste of money, right? Anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, I just have one concern. I'd like to know if, as you said, that it's utilized, so perhaps in our contract then we could have an annual report come from the town of Renfrew. So, and of course, we don't know what kind of card, if they're going to submit cards to us all, or if we have to do that, or if we're going to use our current cards, or how it's going to work. So, Councillor McLaughlin.
Okay, I guess before we start into this agreement, I'd like to, before we decide whether we're going to or not, find out how long are we going to be locked into this, and is there going to be increases? Because I as well would love to have it tracked to see how much is going there. As far as cost savings, there'll be no cost savings because the money will just be gone somewhere else. That's just how things work. My biggest concern, like Councillor Jackson, is I want to see it, and I think everybody wants to see it disposed of properly. And if we could lock in for a year and track, then I would be in agreement, because like it's a lot easier for me. I'm in Renfrew every week. I can take my stuff there, but somebody from Westmeath, it's a whole different ball game. It's a special trip, and it's like I think like Councillor Nicholson says, it's 45 minutes. So am I going to bother? So I think it needs to be tracked, and we need to find out if it's 5 years. I wouldn't be interested in locking in for 5 years.
Okay, CAO, please.
If I may, based on what we're hearing, I think staff have enough, you could still endorse joining them, and as I said, an agreement would follow. And what I'm understanding from council is what's important is that the usage is tracked, and that and the time frame, so kind of a bit of a pilot to see if it's being utilized. And I would say with our new communication tools of the mail out that we're doing to all households kind of nearly every month, there's ways of highlighting that the service is available. So what staff would do is, if this is passed, is then follow up with the town of Renfrew staff to make sure that that would be agreeable to them. A bit of a pilot, and that our use, like should we pursue it and an agreement comes forward, we'd be looking at a shorter time frame, and that should we participate, that the usage would be tracked, so we could determine whether, kind of as a pilot, whether we want to look at this as a kind of a long-term service or whether it's not used. So basically, you're just allowing us to pursue that, and staff will report back. Elaine, I'm looking at you, and Steve would probably report back in the next. They're waiting on the ECA approval. Would you wait? Would they go through that process before coming back, or would you come back to us after talking to the town? And if so, then maybe this item just gets postponed and brought back when those answers are known. So.
Yeah, the issue is if they got to amend the ECA, it's the amount of work they have to go through. And if they're not going to do it, then they wouldn't do the work. If they go ahead and do the ECA, we can tell them that we're based on the an agreement, and also maybe a pilot program. And if we didn't do it, then the ECA would just list us, but we wouldn't bring products to them if we didn't go ahead with the agreement.
I think based on that, Mr. Mayor, I think council has to decide whether you want to do this or not, vote this up or down, and if you want to pursue it, we'll bring an agreement back based on the time frame and the tracking of usage. But if you don't want to explore this, you have to tell us you'd vote no on this, and then we would inform the town of Renfrew that at this time we're not interested. So I think based on that response, because they're not going to do the work associated with their ECA if we're lukewarm about it.
Okay, so do we want to go ahead and have a vote, or do we want more discussion? Councillor Olmsted.
So, sorry, I just want to be clear on what we're voting on. So we'd be voting on moving forward to explore a contract, right? And staff would come back with the term and et cetera of the contract.
Yep. So
Yes.
in terms of the ECA approval, yep.
Great, thank you.
So if I can say, yeah, so step one would be, if council is willing to go ahead, that the town would apply for the ECA, and I know they've reached out to the ministry to see if they can go ahead without the ECA member to add us, because all it is it's one line in the ECA that is not allowing us, and then they came back and said no, they have to have an amendment done. But hopefully they're hoping to put pressure on that we can go ahead with the ECA and go ahead, at least go ahead for this year, and then because the ECA could take it 9 to 12 months to get done.
Just to confirm, so that means that we'll have our 2 events this year, and then once this is being explored, it'll come to, like, the agreement, by the time the ECA gets dealt with, even though John Yakubuski is a miracle worker, there is a provincial election this year, so that part of it, what this council would be doing is exploring it, and then the agreement would come back to the next council for confirmation.
Okay, Councillor Jackson?
Could I ask staff to find out what the intention is with regards to the agreement, and if whether or not they would be able to track the usage from Whitewater residents before we make a decision for this? Because I would hate to make a decision on this, them go through the whole process, and then we find out the agreement later on is for 10 years or 5 years, and we're not all comfortable with that, and they're not able to track it. So I think those questions need to be asked first before we agree or disagree with this, and perhaps that can be as soon as the next council meeting.
Motion to defer, and just to make sure we get the answer to the first meeting in May, if the council wants to move deferral to the first meeting in May, and we'll bring the item back.
I would move to defer.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to move. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McLaughlin, you're a seconder? So this will be deferred then till first council meeting in May? Okay, so we don't have to have a vote then?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, so we're voting on the motion to defer.
To May 4th.
So we're disregarding what the previous motion was. Or motion amended.
Yeah,
We're
by
voting on the
deferring it,
motion.
the motion will come back at the May 4th meeting.
Okay, everybody understood? So we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to cloud permit purchase. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve a single source award for the purchase of subscription to cloud permit, a building services software, at an annual cost of $14,000 for a 3-year term with renewable 2-year option. Motion is seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted and Councillor McLaughlin. Thank you. And this go to, who does this go to?
This is me channeling Ivan and Doug.
Okay, Rob.
So this is in front of you because our delegation of authority bylaw limits staff for single source at 15,000, and because this is a multi-year commitment, the 14,000 would exceed the 15. So basically, cloud permit is what was recommended in the building services review that was funded by the province, and the software year 1 is being funded by the province. This is just confirming that we're going with cloud permit, so it's a single source award. I do note that AMO LAS did an RFP and selected them as a preferred vendor, but we didn't do it. And this is the software that LV, McNabb, Braeside, I know Arm Prior and Petawawa also utilize it, so it's very well used in the county. So it's just to formally approve the purchase.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 6.6, Building Inspection Reciprocal Agreement. A recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve entering into a reciprocal agreement with the Township of Boncher Valley for building inspection cover-off. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay, Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Rob?
This is me channeling Ivan and Doug. So we did help out Boncher Valley when they had a vacancy. They do have an incumbent. The intent of this process is due to when somebody's on vacation or sick, that we would have a reciprocal agreement where we could call on them, they could call on us. This is not the fact that we have 2 and they have 1. They have 1 based on their permit volume. We have 2 based on our permit volume. It allows us to pull them in just to meet demand on our side as much as it is on theirs. And it's also dependent on the fact that if we can't help them out, we can't help them out, but it provides us the opportunity to call on them should we need them, and if they can call on us if we have available time. I should just say that we are busy. I've worked in other counties, Lanark County, where all the municipalities appointed the other CBOs as building inspectors to allow that cover-off. Although that hasn't happened yet here, Boncher Valley has approached us to do this, and I think this is a good way for us to ensure that we always have the volume. So if Sam or Doug are away for a week, but we have a large number of inspections and we can call on Daryl to come, then we would allow to do that. So, and we would only help out Boncher Valley if we could in terms of volume and how busy we are. And it would be based on cost recovery, so it's $60 an hour, and then that would be adjusted annually based on cost of living, and then mileage is also to be paid. So we would charge them if they use our services, and they would charge us if we need their assistance. And I'm hopeful that maybe other municipalities will do so, because finding qualified inspection help and people that can fill in is getting increasingly hard.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we go on to notice of motion. Anyone with notice of motion? Going once, going twice? Oh, Councillor Nicholson, notice of motion, please.
You're going around the table, Mayor. Notice of motion to bring forth a collaborative partnership agreement with the Ottawa Valley OHT. So we'll work with the CAO to bring that motion forward in 2 weeks. Ottawa Valley Ontario Health Team. Yeah, Ottawa Valley Ontario Health Team. Sorry. Good?
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on. Number 8, adoption of minutes, regular council, March 16th. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the minutes of March 16, 2022 minutes. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. Sorry. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to correspondence, and I know we're into flood season here, although our water levels are nowhere near flood, but if anyone is interested, there is stuff on this agenda, 9.1, which will give you opportunities to research the Ottawa River and what is happening at this point. And one other thing of interest is the Westmeath boat launch is being looked at by the Oceans and Fisheries, so that's a bonus, and that was something that was a bone of contention in the Westmeath area, especially last year they couldn't get on the river. So now we move on to bylaws, 10.1. Recommendation, be it resolved that bylaws listed on the April 6, 2022 agenda be taken as read and passed. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And item 11 has been discontinued, so we are adjourned.
Okay, I'm just gonna turn this.
6:50, we are adjourned.
Like